Welcome back to Study Hall, where we take a deep dive into subjects you kind of sort of remember from school.
Yeah.
And turn them into something you can actually,
Right.
talk about at parties.
Absolutely.
So today we are tackling a painting that's both instantly recognizable and endlessly fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
Frida Kahlo's The Two Fridas.
It's one of those artworks that just draws you in, right?
Yes.
Even if you don't know a ton about art history,
Mm-hmm.
there's just something about those two Fridas sitting there holding hands that makes you want to know more.
Totally. Like,
Oh.
hey, I know those eyebrows.
Hey, you know those eyebrows.
But then you start noticing like the exposed hearts, the blood, the stormy background.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this isn't just some artsy double selfie.
Exactly. This painting is practically bursting with symbolism.
Okay.
And to truly appreciate it, we need to understand a bit about Frida Kahlo herself.
Okay.
She was a Mexican painter
Mm-hmm.
who lived a life that was, to put it mildly,
Systematic.
yeah.
Okay, so before we get lost in the symbolisms,
Right.
let's do a quick Frida 101.
Okay.
She was born in Mexico in 1907, and her life was marked by both physical and emotional pain.
You're telling me she contracted polio as a child?
Oh, wow.
And then as a teenager, she was in a horrific bus accident that left her with lifelong injuries.
Ouch. I'm sensing a theme here.
Yeah.
How did all of this trauma shape her art?
Well, Frida turned her pain into power. She started painting seriously while recovering from the bus accident.
Mm.
And her art became a way for her to process her experiences, both physical and emotional.
So she wasn't exactly painting fluffy bunnies and rainbows.
No, not quite. Her work is intensely personal, often raw and unflinching. She explored themes of identity, the body, gender, and her Mexican heritage.
And that brings us to The Two Fridas,
Yes.
which she painted in 1939. What was going on in her life at that time that might have inspired this particular masterpiece?
Well, 1939 was a big year for Frida,
Okay.
both personally and politically. On the personal front, she and her husband, the famous muralist Diego Rivera,
Wait, Diego Rivera, as in the Diego Rivera.
the one and only, had just gotten divorced.
Oh, no.
Their relationship was famously passionate and turbulent,
Okay.
marked by both love and infidelity.
Sounds like a telenovela waiting to happen.
It kind of was.
Okay.
And the heartbreak from that divorce is definitely reflected in the painting.
Yeah.
But it's not just about romantic pain.
Okay.
We also need to consider the political climate of 1939 Mexico.
All right, give me some historical context here.
So Mexico in the 1930s was still grappling with the aftermath of the Mexican Revolution.
Right.
There was this movement called Mexicanidad, which emphasized a return to indigenous roots and a rejection of European influence.
So they were trying to forge a new national identity post-revolution.
Exactly. And this idea of duality of two opposing forces is central to understanding the two Fridas.
Okay, I'm starting to see the connections here.
Yeah.
So we've got Frida's personal heartbreak, the political backdrop of post-revolutionary Mexico, and then there's the painting itself with two Fridas literally embodying this idea of duality.
You got it. Let's take a closer look at those two Fridas.
Okay.
We've got one dressed in a European-style Victorian gown, all white and frilly,
Right.
while the other rocks a traditional Mexican Tijuana dress vibrant and full of life.
It's like she's visually representing these two sides of herself.
Yes,
The European and the Mexican, the modern and the traditional.
precisely.
Yeah.
And if we look even closer, we see that their hearts are connected by a single artery,
Okay.
with blood flowing from the European Frida's exposed heart towards the Mexican Frida.
Wait, hold up. Exposed hearts. Now that's taking symbolism to a whole new level. And why is the European Frida bleeding?
Well, remember the heartbreak we talked about?
Yeah.
The bleeding heart is a pretty literal representation of that emotional pain,
Yeah.
but it also speaks to Frida's physical suffering. She lived with chronic pain her entire life, undergoing countless surgeries and medical procedures.
So the blood isn't just about heartbreak, it's about her physical trauma as well.
Exactly. Frida wasn't afraid to show the messy, painful reality of her existence.
Yeah.
And that boldness, that willingness to be vulnerable is part of what makes her art so powerful.
It's like she's saying, this is me in all my complexity, take it or leave it.
And then there's that little detail of the European Frida holding a surgical clamp trying to stop the bleeding.
Is that a symbol of her trying to control the pain, to heal herself?
It could be interpreted that way,
Mm.
or perhaps it represents her struggle to reconcile these two parts of herself to stop the flow of one identity into the other.
So much to unpack in just this one element.
Right.
What about the Mexican Frida? She seems more grounded, more whole.
Yeah.
And she's holding a tiny portrait of Diego Rivera. What's going on there?
That's a fascinating detail, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some scholars believe it represents the part of Frida that was still deeply connected to Rivera even after the divorce. Remember, their relationship was far more complex than just romantic love.
Yeah.
They shared political beliefs, artistic passions, and a deep connection to their Mexican heritage.
So even though she's physically separated from him in the painting, there's still this emotional link represented by that tiny portrait.
Exactly. And notice how the Mexican Frida's heart is intact, healthy.
Right.
It suggests that this part of her, the part connected to her roots and her heritage, is a source of strength.
It's like she's drawing strength from her Mexican identity, even as the European side of her is wounded and bleeding.
Precisely. And this interplay between strength and vulnerability between two seemingly opposing forces is what makes the two Fridas so compelling.
Okay, my brain is already doing backflips trying to process all this symbolism.
Yeah.
But before we dive any deeper, let's take a step back and consider Frida's artistic style. How would you describe it?
Well, Frida rejected the label of surrealist, but her work definitely shares some similarities with that movement.
Okay.
There's a dreamlike quality to her paintings,
Mm-hmm.
a blending of reality and fantasy.
And a heavy use of symbolism.
But it's not just surrealism, right? There are also strong influences from Mexican folk art.
Absolutely. Frida drew inspiration from traditional Mexican art forms, particularly ex voto paintings.
Nice voto paintings.
Yeah, these were small devotional paintings that people would offer to saints or religious figures as a way of giving thanks for a miracle
Wow.
or asking for protection.
So they're like visual prayers, often depicting everyday people and events.
Exactly. And Frida borrows from that style in the two Fridas.
Okay.
Notice the flat perspective, the bold outlines, and the way she uses symbolism to tell a story.
Right.
It's all very reminiscent of ex voto painting.
And by using that style, she's elevating her own personal story, her pain and resilience,
Yeah.
to the level of a religious experience almost.
It's a really insightful observation.
Thanks.
And it speaks to Frida's ability to connect the personal and the universal, to take her own experiences and transform them into something that resonates with people across cultures and generations. All right, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface of the two Fridas.
Yeah, definitely.
Stay tuned because we're about to get even deeper into the symbolism, the artistic techniques,
Yes.
and the enduring legacy of this remarkable painting.
Can't wait.
All right, we'll be right back. And we're back for more of this deep dive into the two Fridas.
Yes.
You know, it's like we're peeling back the layers of a really complex onion.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Only this onion is way more interesting than the ones making you cry in the kitchen.
Definitely more colorful, too.
So where do we start with this layer of the Frida onion?
Let's talk about the hands.
Hands.
Yeah. You might think hands. Big deal.
Right.
But trust me, in art, nothing is accidental.
Okay, so what's the deal with these Fridas, these hands?
Yeah.
They're clasped together, right?
Exactly. And that seemingly simple gesture is loaded with meaning.
Give it to me.
Remember, we're dealing with two sides of Frida here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hands symbolize a connection, a link between these dual aspects of her identity. It's like they need each other,
Yeah,
even though they represent these different parts of her personality.
precisely. And notice how delicately they're holding hands.
Okay.
It's not a forceful grip.
Right.
It's almost tentative, fragile even. It speaks to the delicate balance between these two Fridas,
Okay.
the constant negotiation between who she is and who she wants to be.
So they're supporting each other, but there's also this sense of tension.
Yes,
Like the connection could be broken at any moment.
exactly. And that tension is heightened by the blood flowing between them. It's like
Yeah.
their very life force is intertwined, but it's also a source of pain.
Right, let's talk about that blood some more. It's such a visceral image. You know, you don't often see exposed hearts in a portrait, much less blood pumping between them.
Well, Frida's work often challenges traditional notions of beauty and femininity.
Okay.
She wasn't afraid to show the raw, messy reality of the female body,
Yeah.
especially a body that had endured so much pain.
She's definitely not going for that idealized, airbrushed look you see in so many classical portraits. Not at all. And that rejection of traditional beauty standards is part of what makes her work so powerful.
How so?
It's like she's saying this is what a woman's body really looks like with all its imperfections and vulnerabilities.
And that's incredibly radical, especially for the 1930s.
Absolutely. Think about the context.
Yeah.
This is a time when women were expected to be demure to hide their pain,
Right.
to conform to societal expectations.
And Frida's like, nah, I'm not playing that game.
Exactly. She's doing the exact opposite. She's putting her pain, both physical and emotional, front and center.
She's making a statement not just about her own experiences,
Right.
but about the female experience in general.
Precisely. And this brings us to the feminist interpretations of the two Fridas.
Okay.
This painting has become an iconic image for feminist movements around the world.
But why? What makes it so powerful from a feminist perspective?
Well, for one thing, it challenges the male gaze that has dominated art history for centuries.
Okay.
Traditionally, women in art have been portrayed as objects of beauty to be admired by the male viewer. Frida is reclaiming her own image, her own body, and presenting it on her own terms.
So it's like, I'm not here for your viewing pleasure, guys.
Exactly. And that's incredibly empowering. But it's not just about challenging the male gaze.
Okay.
It's also about celebrating female strength and resilience.
All right.
Yeah.
Because even though the European Frida is wounded and bleeding, she's not giving up.
Yeah.
And the Mexican Frida is standing strong, literally holding her up.
Exactly. And that idea of female solidarity, of women supporting each other through pain and adversity, is another reason why this painting resonates so strongly with feminist audiences.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the other big theme we touched on earlier.
Okay.
Mexicana Dad.
Yeah.
How does that play out in this painting?
Well, we've already talked about the contrasting outfits, the European dress versus the traditional Tijuana dress.
Right.
But look closer at the details. The Mexican Frida is adorned with flowers and jewelry, symbols of fertility and abundance.
It's like she's embodying the richness of Mexican culture, the vibrancy of its traditions.
Exactly. And the Tijuana dress itself is significant.
Okay, tell me more.
It's a garment that was traditionally worn by indigenous women in the Isthmus of Tehuantepec, a region known for its strong matriarchal society.
So it's not just any dress.
No.
It's a symbol of female power and indigenous heritage.
Precisely. And by choosing to portray herself in this dress, Frida is making a powerful statement about her own identity. She's embracing her Mexican heritage and aligning herself with the strong women of her culture.
It's like she's reclaiming her indigenous roots, rejecting the European influence that had been imposed on Mexico for centuries.
Exactly. And that rejection is further emphasized by the stormy background.
Right.
Remember, this is 1939. Europe is on the brink of war, and Mexico is trying to forge its own path independent of European influence.
So the storm could represent the turmoil of the times, both in Europe and in Mexico itself?
Precisely. And it also creates a sense of unease, of something brewing beneath the surface. It's like Frida's saying, yes, I'm embracing my Mexican identity, but it's not without its challenges.
It's a reminder that identity is complex.
Yeah.
It's not always black and white.
Exactly. And that complexity is reflected in the way Frida uses color.
Okay, how so?
She's not afraid to use bold, vibrant colors, even when depicting pain and suffering.
Right, like the bright red blood flowing between the two Fridas. It's shocking, but it's also strangely beautiful.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there can be beauty, there can be life, there can be hope. And that brings us to the psychological interpretations of the two Fridas.
Okay, this is where things get really deep. I'm ready to dive into the subconscious.
Well, some scholars believe that the two Fridas represent different aspects of her personality, different sides of her psyche.
So like that classic good angel, bad angel on your shoulder.
Not quite. It's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
Remember, Frida was a complex individual who had experienced tremendous pain and trauma. It's only natural that her psyche would reflect that complexity.
So the two Fridas could be like different facets of her personality, different ways of coping with her experiences.
Exactly. And the fact that they're connected by that shared artery suggests that these different aspects of her personality are inextricably linked, even if they're in conflict.
It's like she's saying, this is me in all my contradictions, all my messiness.
Precisely. And that message resonates with people because we all have different sides to our personalities,
All right.
different ways of being in the world.
We're all a little bit two-faced, so to speak.
Exactly. And Frida's not afraid to show that she's not trying to present a perfect, polished image of herself. She's embracing her complexity, her contradictions, her humanity.
And that's what makes her art so relatable, so powerful. She's not afraid to be vulnerable, to show her flaws, to let us see the raw, messy truth of her existence.
And in doing so, she gives us permission to do the same. She reminds us that it's okay to be imperfect, to be broken, to be a work in progress.
That's a beautiful message. And I think it's one of the reasons why the two Fridas continues to resonate with people today, decades after it was painted. It's a timeless masterpiece that speaks to the complexities of the human experience.
Okay, so we've covered Frida's life, her style, the symbolism in the two Fridas.
Yes.
But where does this painting fit, like, in the big picture of art history, you know?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, the answer is kind of mind-blowing. The two Fridas isn't just a painting.
Okay.
It's become like a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
Wow. So how did a portrait of double Frida go viral before the internet even existed?
It's all about the message. You know, the way it taps into these universal human experiences.
Okay.
We talked about the feminist and post-colonial themes, but there's also this deep exploration of identity.
Yeah.
You know, the self-divided.
Right, like that age-old question of who am I really? But Frida's like, here's a painting that shows you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that resonates with people on such a profound level.
Regardless of background or time period.
I can see that.
It's why the two Fridas keeps popping up everywhere.
Like, well,
books, movies, even tattoos.
Wow. So Frida's basically like the OG influencer.
Oh, absolutely.
Inspiring people decades later.
Totally. But the impact goes beyond just being trendy.
Yeah.
The two Fridas has sparked real conversations about mental health, about accepting our imperfections, about embracing the full spectrum of who we are.
It's like Frida gave us permission to be messy, complicated humans, and not just those picture-perfect versions we try to project, you know.
Precisely. And that's a radical notion even today.
Especially today.
Right? Think about all the pressure to conform, to fit in,
Oh, yeah.
to present this flawless image on social media. And Frida's like, nah, let's get real here.
I love that. So her art makes you think.
Yeah.
If Frida could be so open about her struggles, maybe I can too.
It's that vulnerability, that raw honesty
that
makes her work so timeless. You know, it invites us into a conversation.
Yeah.
A dialogue about those things we often try to hide.
So it's not just a pretty picture on a museum wall.
No.
It's an invitation to get introspective.
Yeah.
To ask ourselves some tough questions about our own two Fridas, so to speak.
Exactly. And that's why studying this painting, really engaging with it, can be such a powerful experience.
Okay.
It's not just about appreciating Frida's skill as an artist.
Right.
It's about understanding what she's trying to say about the human condition.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own souls.
Yeah.
All those messy, beautiful contradictions that make us who we are.
And that's where Frida's genius lies, you know?
Okay.
She takes these deeply personal experiences, heartbreak, pain, the search for identity,
Right.
and transforms them into something universal, something we can all connect with.
It's like she's saying, hey, I see you, I feel you, and you're not alone in this crazy journey called life.
Yeah. And that's a powerful message, one that continues to resonate with people all over the world.
Well, there you have it. We've explored the symbolism, the history, the psychological depths, even the pop culture legacy of Frida Kahlo's The Two Fridas.
It's a painting that rewards close attention.
Definitely.
That invites you to ask questions, to dig deeper, to discover new layers of meaning with each encounter.
So next time you see those iconic eyebrows, don't just scroll on by.
Right.
Take a moment to really look.
Yes.
To think, to feel. Who knows? You might just discover a little bit of yourself reflected in those two Fridas.
And on that note, we'll bid you farewell from Study Hall.
Keep those curious minds buzzing. Keep exploring the world of art.
Absolutely.
And remember, a little bit of self-reflection never hurt anyone.
Never.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.